بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم
Assalamu alaikum. It is Tuesday, the 21st of December 2021. And in our series Reflections on the Holy Quran, this is broadcast number 287. And we'll start discussing verse 97 of chapter 2 of the Holy Quran today. These broadcasts are brought to you by the Lahore Ahmadiyya community, also known as Ahmadiyya Anjuman Ishaq Islam and the Lahore Ahmadiyya movement, etc. And it was founded by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib. And his teaching was that although people say that after the Holy Prophet Muhammad, another prophet will come or has come, but in the Holy Quran, God says that the Holy Prophet is Khatamun Nabiyyin, and Holy Prophet explained this by saying, La Nabi Abadi. There is no prophet after me. Ana Khatamun Nabiyyin, I am Khatamun Nabiyyin, La Nabi Abadi, there is no prophet after me. So now no prophet can come, whether an old one or a new one. And if reform is needed, then God will send reformers called mujaddids, and he will guide them about what needs to be reformed and how. This will, of course, give rise to differences of opinion, but the Holy Prophet had said that if one reciter of the kalima calls another reciter of the kalima a heretic, a kafir, then the person saying it is closer to heresy. So although on small things we rush to call each other kafirs and heretics and this and that and so on, we should really listen to the Holy Prophet Muhammad. Similarly, people say that some prophetic revelation has been missed out and is not in the Holy Quran, such as the verse relating to Rajam or stoning to death, and Surah Walayat, a whole chapter. But Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that God has said that he revealed the Holy Quran and he will guard it. So nothing has been left out of the Holy Quran. Similarly, people say that some verses of the Holy Quran have been abrogated. Again, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad rejected this and said no verse of the Holy Quran was, is, or ever shall be abrogated. Sorry about that. And Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad said that jihad is the duty of every Muslim. But jihad as defined by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, who, when returning from fighting, said that Muslims are returning from Jihad-e Asghar, or the minor struggle, the minor jihad, to Jihad Akbar, that means the major struggle. And then went on to explain that Jihad Akbar is Jihad bin Nafs, a struggle with your own desires and so on. So, with that, let us turn to the verse of the Holy Quran. It is 97. This starts a new section of the chapter. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل من كان عدوا لجبريل فإنه نزله على قلبك بإذن الله مصدقا لما بين يديه وهدى وبشرى للمؤمنين. Say, whoever is an enemy of Gabriel, for surely he revealed it to your heart by Allah's command, verifying that which is before it, and a guidance and glad tidings for the believers. So, I'm not going to look at words like qul, which simply means say, man kana, and so we'll go to word number 4, adun. And I was hoping to go through another word, but I didn't have time during the Urdu part of the broadcast. So we'll restrict ourselves to this word in the English version of the broadcast as well. Otherwise, the two will get out of step, and I will have difficulty remembering where I was with which broadcast. Okay, so let us look at this word. Its triliteral root is Ain Dal Wa, and the total occurrences of that root, or words based on that root, is 106. And 13 different words made from those through letters appear in the Holy Quran. For example, 50 times it says Adu, and what's the next one? 50, then 15 times Ihtada, and 8 times Udwan, and 6 times Qadawat, and again 6 times Muqtadeen and Ad. And then 3 times we have Muqtad, and 3 times we have Yata'adda. And what else is there? Twice we have Udwat, And once we have Adiyat, and that I think is it. Now, its basic meaning is distancing, a distance between two things, two people. This is why the word for stranger, someone you don't know, al-Ghida, is based on this. There is a distance between you. And the word for a piece of wood that is placed in between two other woods comes from the same. Why? Because that piece of wood is creating a distance between the other two. So that is why, and this is found in Urdu as well, Aduwan is enemy. This is the opposite, this is the antonym of Sadiqan, friend. Or another word, Waliyan. Remember, Sadiq is friend and Waliyan is helper. So this is the opposite of both of these. And of course, it is used for speed as well. Walking quickly, running. Why? Because by doing that, you're creating distance between yourself and something else. And similarly, if you are not getting justice, it's called udwan. There is distance between what you want and what has been allowed. They're generally unjust, and so on. In fact, the Holy Quran says that at creation, humanity was created as one. But then self-interest came in and people started to use laws or just ignore the law for their own benefit and advantage, etc. And that divided the humanity into many groups and so on. And we have the example right at the beginning with the sons of Hazrat Adam, that one's offering was accepted and the other one's offering wasn't accepted, and he became jealous, etc. And that started to divide humanity. Whereas the Holy Quran wants the whole of humanity. And we're not talking about any particular countries or religions or whatever. The whole of humanity. God wants it to be together as clouds. What does that mean? When you have clouds in the sky, you can see that there are two clouds and then they merge. And once they merge, you can't tell which cloud is which cloud was coming from the right and which one was coming from the left, and so on. You can't tell. They've merged, they've come together. This is how God wants humanity to be. And this is how humanity is not. So let me have a look at some verses of the Holy Quran. For example, in chapter 7, verse 24, Ba'dukum li ba'din adu. You are enemies of each other. Yawma yuhsharu a'da'ullah. Chapter 41, verse 19. When those who are distant from God, and those who are God's enemies, they'll be taken to hell. So you have enemies of two types: those who deliberately do things to harm you, and these are referred to in the Holy Quran in many places, in many different ways. For example, جَعَلْنَا لِكُلِّ نَبِيٍّ عَدُوًّا مِّنَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. Chapter 25, verse 31. From the sinners, from among the sinners, we came enemies of the prophets. In another place, God says, Aduvum wa shayateen insi wal jinni. Then from the devils. And it doesn't necessarily mean devil in itself as we know it, but people, human beings who possess an evil nature. And the jinn, there were enemies of the prophets. So these are enemies who deliberately set out to do you harm. You know, the obvious example is people of Makkans, who did everything they could to harm Muslims and the Holy Prophet Muhammad. When they were in Makkah, they were tortured and persecuted and killed even. When they left Makkah, when some of them went to Abyssinia, the Quraysh pursued them to try and get them back. When Muslims went and they found sanctuary in Medina, then the Quraysh attacked Medina. So they were actively pursuing a policy of enmity and hatred and so on. Now then you have another type of enemy who doesn't sort of actively pursue a policy to hurt or harm you, but what he does is he's disinterested in anything to do with you. And really, the harm that he does is just as bad as any enemy who'd set out to harm you. I mean, for example, if you fall down the stairs, there's no one else in the house, and you break your leg, and you can't get to the phone, or you can't get to anything, and for some reason your front door is open, and someone peeks in, sees you lying there, and doesn't do anything. Doesn't ask, are you okay? Do you need any help? Whatever. Just leaves you lying there. Now, he is doing as much harm to you as someone who would have set out to harm you. And the Holy Quran refers to such people as فَإِنَّهُمْ عَدُوٌّ لِّي إِلَّا رَبَّ الْعَالَمِينَ. Chapter 26, verse 77, that they are my enemies, they are against me, but Rabb is with me. My Lord is with me. He is my friend. And interestingly, and this is something people ignore, it's not mentioned very much anywhere. In chapter 64, verse 14, God warns, says, Aduwallakum fakhzaruhum. This is about your own progeny, your children. That be careful of them. They too are your enemies. You may be surprised and you may think, hang on, how can your kids be your enemies? But what you got to think is what God has in mind, so to speak. What God is saying is that I have made it a duty for you to speak the truth, to be just, to do the right thing. And what can happen is that your love for your family, for your children, may lead you astray. You wouldn't do or say anything wrong to get benefit yourself. But when it comes to your kids, you may do something wrong. You know, there are no witnesses to your child having committed murder. And the child says, well, I was at home with mom and dad watching television. And all you have to do is go to court and say, yeah, he was there. And there is no other evidence. What will you do? Will you do the right thing and speak the truth, or will you lie? That is the crux of the matter. That is what the Holy Quran is saying. That you will be tempted to lie to save your child. And there was in the UK some years ago a great debate that went on because a lady found that her child was selling drugs. So she reported her child to the police. And that started a great debate in the newspapers and television and so on. Well, it's parents' job to protect their children and so on. And this lady reported her son to the police and he ended up in jail and all this kind of thing. What kind of mother is she? And so on and so forth. No one asked what kind of son it was that who was going around destroying the lives of other children. There were other mothers and fathers who had children whose lives were being destroyed by this guy's supply of drugs. And this is what the Quran says, that yes, he is your child. But every person has a duty to the whole of humanity. And that's the thing that people forget. And there is another verse in the Holy Quran. وَلَا تُمْسِكُوهُنَّ دِرَارًا لِتَعْتَدُوا. Chapter 2, verse 231. Don't keep them in your nikah. Don't keep them as your wives. Just to be able to make their lives difficult for them. And we see this often in many Muslim places, that a husband, he marries another wife and out of some kind of grudge, he doesn't divorce the first one. And he humiliates her, he tortures her, doesn't give her her due, etc. And the Holy Quran specifically warns against that. In fact, it goes further than that, that women are given these rights and so on. And we proudly announce to the West and to everyone else that, look, Islam, it allows women divorce, and it allows divorced women to marry again, and it allows widows to marry again, and so on. But it's one thing to write such things in books. Now the question is, what happens in practice? If a woman is widowed, is anyone going to remarry her? And I say many times that those of us who embraced Islam and were originally came from Hinduism, etc. What we've done is we've changed our names, but we've retained all the rituals and ideas and things of the Hindu community. We say in theory, oh yeah, a widow can remarry. Oh yeah, a woman, if she's not happy, she's entitled to divorce and remarriage and so on. But the Hindu custom is that a widow does not remarry. A woman can't divorce, and no one marries a divorced woman. And we have exactly the same thing. Although we say, oh, well, in the book it says. In the book it says. And but the point is that Islam actually gives people rights in practice. This is why the Holy Prophet Muhammad, when he married Hazrat Khatija, she'd been widowed twice. Now in Pakistan, people would say, oh, look, she's eaten two of her husbands. They would literally say, she's eaten two of her husbands. And no one would marry her, but the Holy Prophet married her. Apart from Hazrat Aisha, all his wives were either divorcees or widows, and so on and so forth. And I use this as an example, but Islam gives rights to children as well. But that doesn't mean that you lie on their behalf. That means a child has a right to expect a good upbringing, a good education, to be taught right from wrong. And we saw yesterday that this Indian director has been nominated for an Oscar, and he was telling his story. And he was at primary school and he had to leave school and get a job laboring. And then he started studying as well, and etc., etc. It's a long story. But the point is this, that if it wasn't the parents, but the society that was oppressing that child. His father earned so little that there was no way of putting food on the table without sending his little kid who should be at school to go labor. And we see this. You see, the West makes so much noise about, you know, there shouldn't be any child labor and so on. And in a Panorama program, they interviewed the owner of a factory. And they said, aren't you ashamed that there are children working here? And he said, why should I be ashamed? You're the ones who should be ashamed. When your business managers and buyers and directors come to me and they drive down the price, drive down the price, drive down the price, don't they know that an adult can't work at those prices? They know full well. And he said that, and the Panorama guy said, yeah, but well, they come and inspect your factories. And they said, yeah, and the guy said, yes. They ring me and they tell me that in 2 weeks they're going to come and inspect my factory on this day at this time. So I make sure that on that day at that time there are no kids working in the factory. They come, they see all adults, and that eases their conscience. And he says, they know it's children working. But then he also pointed out, what would these children do? Their parents can't afford to send them to school. They'll just roam the streets. Because both the West is exploiting them and their own society is exploiting them. At least if they are working, they're contributing to the household expenditure and not roaming the streets and fighting and throwing stones and stealing and so on. I suppose that has some merit to it, very little, but some. But the best thing would be for these people, for these children, to be gaining knowledge and guidance in school. And this is what God refers to, and I end with these two verses of the Holy Quran, chapter 2, verse 2 to 9. Tilka hududullahi fala ta'taduha. These are the God's limits, so do not transgress. Chapter 3, verse 7. Fa'ula'ika humul adun. They have exceeded the bounds that God has set. And it is very sad that people who purport to be Muslims are oppressing those who need support and not oppression. They need help. They need a living wage. Children need to be educated and in school so that they can better themselves and so on. We've slightly gone over our time, so I take my leave of you with a prayer that whoever you are, regardless of your religion, sect, nationality, color, creed, caste, may Allah keep the whole of humanity under His protection and free from harm, and give them common sense to see that we only have this little planet and that we need to get along with each other and not oppress each other and help each other. Because if we lose this planet, we haven't got anywhere else to go. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz. Goodbye.